hack. This is Substance Painter. So let's say I wanted to bring something in to texture it. I have to have it UV mapped first. And I have to be careful about UVs that are on top of each other. Really, unless the texture is supposed to have the exact same, this object's supposed to have the exact same surface with no difference to it. You don't want your UVs on top of each other, right? But to prep something to go into here, I got to make sure that I actually, oops, let me close some of this stuff up. That might help. No. I want to make sure that the model is ready. So just real quick, let me just show you. I'm going to go into here, into Maya, and say maybe I want to take one of my pieces of furniture or something like a table into Substance to texture. It's already UV mapped and laid out. And I want to go in and just apply some textures to this, whether it's this guy or this guy over here, right? And so what I would do is I would select that model. I would export it out as an FBX. Export selection. And I will call this one coffee. Yes. Yep. Should be. Yep. Exporting it out as a coffee table. And now I'm going to go into Substance. Close this guy. And I'm going to say File, New. And it's going to ask me a few questions. Okay? So the first is what kind of template? Well, in other words, what it's asking me is what kind of material am I going to use? How am I going to be using it? Is it going to be a regular PBR material? Is it going to be going to be used in Unity? Is it going to be used in Unreal? And based on its usage is how I choose which one of these I want. For Maya, I'm just going to say a PBR metallic roughness. And now it's saying mesh. Well, what do you want to paint? So I select. And now I have to go and find that guy. There's the coffee table right there, the FBX. We are going to, normal map format, DirectX is fine. It has DirectX or OpenGL. I'm going to say DirectX. Document resolution, I'm going to start at 1K. But in Substance Painter, the texture is actually scalable. So what that means is I can, unlike most programs, I can actually scale it up or down at any time, and it will retain its resolution, depending on, based off how the materials are being used. And do I want to import any normal maps or baked maps for the materials? So this is, we'll get into this later, but this is like if I had made normal maps already or curvature maps and all that. We didn't. We're going to do everything in here. So I'll just show you this real quick. So we don't have to worry about that. And I'm just going to say, okay. It'll take a second. And booyah, there it is. So there's my table. Here's my UV map. And we could see it has the Lambert that was applied to it. And then down at the bottom in the shelf is a whole bunch of different things that I can have and use procedural textures, actual textures that are being applied, filters. But the real cool thing about this that you can start from is materials and smart materials.
Would you go back and that icon that had the violet with it? There was one icon that had violet at the beginning.
These guys? Those are normal maps. 3-dimensional bump maps.
Okay. Yeah, that's why earlier when I mentioned violet, that's what I was thinking.
Okay. Yeah, those are the normal maps. They're 3-dimensional bump maps. They get lighting information not just up and down like a bump, but from the XYZ angle to make something look a lot higher resolution. So, do you want to see something really cool? Let's say we need a starting point. I have materials and smart materials. The smart materials are only really going to work, they work their best, I should say, when I've generated a curvature map and stuff like that. But a regular material, let's say I want to start with a wood. Here's one right here. And you notice I have layers. So I'm just going to drag this guy up here. And there's a wood. Look at that. They're like, it's cheating. So, I've got this wood texture, and that looks pretty good. You see it has a normal map. It has specularity and roughness. That looks pretty nice. And but I don't have to stop there. So now I can go in and say, well, maybe I want to give different treatments to different areas. So I have a whole host of different materials that I could change, and I can also paint and put layers on top. Down here are the properties. Let me kind of boost this up underneath the layer so you can see them.
Can you see what pearl looks like?
Da, 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 da.
Yeah, I want to see what that looks like.
Which one?
Pearl. Yeah, that one there. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, this one? The platinum. That's just if I drag that up. There. And I'd have to turn this one off. That's it. So Steven Spielberg's, not Steven, George Lucas says, but I don't know. It's free. It's free for students, man. You get it for free. Isn't that nice? So as a student, you get, you're not supposed to make money off of it, of course, but as a student, you get the whole Substance suite for free. You just have to go online and say what school you're on, and they may ask you for something, I think. But basically, because we have it in the school, and we have a lot, you guys get it for free to use, which is nice. So check this out, just real quick. Here are my properties. I can change the UV scaling, all that good stuff, but UV offset, rotation of whatever is selected. So if I select that one, do you see that? So I can tile it up and down. So, or I could offset it if I need to move it, or I could even rotate the texture. Look at that. So that's actually really good for if certain areas like, oh, I don't want the grain to be going in this direction on a certain part. So I will just apply it to certain polygons or UV shell and rotate a duplicate of this material so that it's going in the right direction. But that's not even the powerful. It's like, wow, that looks like a powerful part of it. Actually, it isn't. Let's say I want there to be a different surface on the top up here. And so either I could make my own, or I could actually, a lot of times you use these guys and you tweak them out. So just like this wood, if you look down here, I could change the wood color. Maybe I want to be more of a reddish tone, more of a yellow. I can make it darker. I could go in and I could start to tweak out here's the roughness of it. So remember what we said, roughness. The smoother something is, you see how reflective it is now? And then if I increase the roughness, it becomes more dull. You see that? Fibers are built into it. So how many fibers and stuff that we would have in the wood itself. And layers. Look at that. I can add more layers of wood on top of it. So this is a good way that even though you start out with one of these templates, that I can modify the heck out of it so that it's very different from the original. And then on top of that, so let's see, there's the technical parameters, luminosity, contrast. I can even change the hue of what's existing. I can desaturate it so it's like an older wood. I can increase the intensity of the normals or tone them down more. So check it out. These are it's the normal map that's actually bumping it. So I can say how much of it it's going to look at and how little. I can adjust the height position, which is what is set to be like the flat part, and AO is ambient occlusion, which once again, if I actually had some of those other maps we talked about, you would see it happening. Yes?
In order to apply substance, in order to apply textures and substance painter to an object, you have to first bump map the object in Maya?
No.
Or all you have to do is just first UV map the object?
UV map it.
And then you can go to substance painter.
Yep, and check this out. If I add a new layer, like if I go up here and you see there's these little guys like add a fill layer, add a folder, but I can actually add a layer to here. So I can make a mask. Let's add a layer. And this is where the real power comes in. I can go to a brush, choose a brush like just as a default, and then change the parameters of that and paint, let's see that on top of it. But I can do all sorts of cool stuff like maybe it's dirt and maybe it's going to be bumped up. So the height map, I increase it. It's going to be dull. And what else did we want to do? Okay, so that should be, oops, and the color, of course. So what you could see, control, let's increase that. You see that? Or I can reverse the height, like some of we were talking about, like, oh, something's carved in. Look at this. So you see that? And I'm actually damaging it now. But depending on my brush that I'm using, I could change the alpha to something else, like some sort of lines or something. Drips, dirt, scratches. There's all sorts of things you can use. I can even bring in my own textures. But look at this. So if I increase, here we go. See that? Or I could change the color of it. And depending on the scale, and I may have to go in and change, last thing, just change the resolution of this. And there's like there's like so many. So I switch it up to a 2K texture. Watch, it's going to get sharper. Yeah, look at that. Now when I go in, look at that. Or I could change it that it is, those scratches are not going to change their angles. And follow path. So look at this. So depending on what I do, I can get some really, really cool effects on it, see? See that? So now I can get in, look at that, where we can get some really cool details and dirt and water staining, and I could even go in and add another material on top of this and mask it so it's only in that center piece. So let's say it's a glossy material. I'll drop it on top. And this is the last thing, I promise. Boop. We drop it on top. And I want to mask this out, so I will tell it add a black mask. And then I want to put it so it's just in that area. So that means I'm going to go in and I'm going to do a polygon fill based on a UV set. So now it's only in that area. And now I can go back and just tweak out that one layer. Oh, you know what? No, I want this to be white. And I want it to be like super reflective. Maybe very metallic. Maybe I'll even put it so that it's further down. Oh, no, I gotta move this. But you see where it's like, wow, that's really cool. I can actually do all this stuff. Stop that. And now I can just tell this one in the normal to add a black mask, or actually add a white mask, but then mask out that one top part. So you start to see, there we go, look at that. So I have all these little things I can do which are really, really cool. Look at that. Polished to perfection, that poor housekeeper. It's like, oh no. See?
How much is this software normally? How do you subscribe to that?
There's a indie version and then there's the professional version. I own the indie version. And you can get it as 3 packages. It's Substance Painter, Substance Designer, and Bitmap to Material. And how much did when it's on sale, you can get all 3 for under $200. When it's not, it's like $250, I think, or something like that. If you go for the full-on version, which the only real time you really need to is if you're like doing big production and you're making a fair amount. But yeah, I've for the last few years I've just used the indie version. Mm-hmm.
Seems like if you got the indie version, you could like pirate the whole library of materials. Appropriate them. I'm sure there's a way to like appropriate. It's like $1,000 for that library.
Well, they're all customized in here. So they're all built off of a material that works with the Substance engine. And so the Substance materials, so I can either export out, what I would do is export out these textures into Maya to apply to my, to my desk. Or if I want to use their materials, because I can use, like with all these little controls and stuff, I can use a Substance material in Unreal, in Unity, in Maya, but I have to go through them to do it, to set it up. I mean, not through them, but I have to set it up in here. And what they do is they don't, unless you have a full-on version, they don't give you some of those things, or they limit it. So the indie version, you could do a heck of a lot. There's just a couple of things that, depending on what you're doing, and you still have access to a lot of the materials, but if you want to make your own, if you want to hit the real power of it, you kind of have to, you do have to pay for it. But all these are not like, I can't use it for everything. So you can see I can actually swap out like all these different materials, which is kind of nice, just by selecting. Like, oh wow, fancy pants, look, it's got gold. But I mean, ultimately they're still more reasonable than a lot of other places. And just for texturing, if nothing else, if I'm just going to make the texture maps that I'll bring into Unreal or Unity and then use their own material shader and plug the textures in, then you're fine. If you don't tweak things out and they see it, then yeah, you know, sooner or later, and you're just rolling in money, they're gonna, hey, we checked your license, you can't, we noticed that, you know. But usually most companies do not go after you unless you're notably making money, because it's more expensive to chase you. You know, unless they want to make an example of you. But if you're making the kind of bread that gets their attention, they deserve to get paid.
Materials and textures and stuff, you pull out a substance, so they like, you know, like license marked or something if you put it into a file.
Well, it depends on how you're using it, because this, right now I'm generating the textures that I would plug into Arnold to use. So that's what I'm paying for. That's totally legit. That's it, right? But if I'm talking about these materials are inside of here. There's only a few of them that are pulled out, or if I go to Substance Designer, I can build a material to spit out. But yeah, there are certain limitations of if I'm going to use that material for Maya hardware or the game engines. You know, they'll have it, and they'll know because, oh, it's a substance material that you're using because it's tagged in there. So, you know, but making the textures, that's what we're doing, you know.
I guess I thought like when I thought you said like substance was good because it's I'm at the algorithmic website and it shows like if you wish to obtain licenses for school, contact us to get.
Not the school, student.
Yeah, because I'm at the educational license.
Yes.
Well, something I've noticed with like music software, for example, it's like I have a friend who, you know, he plays completely by the book, you know,